meeting of the Planning Committee being held under the Local Authorities Coronavirus Meetings Wales Regulations 2020. And I think it's Councillor Emma Rapier's first meeting, so we welcome you, Emma. And Councillor Glyn Karen is watching us this morning, so we'll all have to be good, won't we? Right. It is not practicable for this meeting to be broadcast live. However, a recording of this meeting will be made available as soon as possible after the meeting has concluded. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings. I have had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can members use the chat bar to indicate when you want to speak, and remember to keep your microphone muted when you are not talking. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, attendance and apologies. Geraint, do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we've just got apologies from Councillor Ron Burnett.
Right, thank you. Right, we'll move on. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Geraint, could you please ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they have any interest to declare?
No problem, Chair. Right, starting with Councillor Ashley.
Yes, items 4, 5 and 6. It's all in the it's all in the Cwmbran Community Council area, and also items 4. I got to get this right. 4 and 5. I'm also Cwmbran Community Councillor. I'm sorry, I'm also the ward councillor. What am I on about? Obviously personal, non-prejudicial, which is what I declared on them before. I think I'm allowed to take part in the debate.
Yes, I think you are.
Okay, thanks. I'll just double check in a sec that Councillor Bevan hasn't managed to join yet. I can't see him in the participants, so I'll move on. Councillor Constance.
Yes, I've declared interest in planning application 4 and 5 due to the fact that I work for Stagecoach. I've been advised to leave the meeting, so that's what I'll be doing.
Thank you, Councillor Constance. I'll just check whether Councillor Crick has made it. Yeah, Councillor Crick, please.
No, I've nothing to declare, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crick. Councillor Evans. Councillor Evans.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Somebody else. No, I got nothing I'm aware of. No. Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Councillor Hawler.
Nothing to declare, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Nothing to declare.
Councillor Jenkins.
Nothing to declare.
Thank you. Just check whether Councillor Faye Jones is.
Yes,
Yep. Councillor Jones.
I have items 4, 5 and 6 as I'm on Cwmbran Community Council.
And that's just personal, non-prejudicial, is it, Councillor Jones?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Janet Jones.
Nothing, Geraint.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connell.
Nothing.
Thank you. Councillor Parish.
Nothing to declare, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rapier.
No, I've got nothing to declare.
Okay, cheers. And Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, Geraint, it's just a personal interest because plan application 6 as it's in my ward.
Okay, cheers. That's everyone, Chair.
Thank you very much, Geraint. Right, we'll move on to our agenda item 3, minutes of the Planning Committee from the 18th of March 2021. Geraint, could I ask you please to ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they agree that the minutes are a true and accurate record of that meeting?
No problem, Chair. Starting with Councillor Ashley, please.
Agreed.
Just double check again that Councillor Bevan hasn't made it in. I think it's just Councillor Bevan and Councillor Burnett not in the meeting now, Chair. So Councillor Constance. I think Councillor Constance has left because of his interest coming up in 4 and 5. He's not in the.
Oh, right.
I think he's left slightly early.
Okay.
Right. Shall I move on, Chair?
Yes, move on.
All right. Councillor Crick.
Agreed.
Thanks. Councillor Evans.
Agreed, I heard you fully this time. Yeah.
Councillor Horler,
Agreed.
Councillor James,
Agreed.
Councillor Jenkins,
Agreed.
Councillor Fay Jones,
Agreed.
Councillor Janet Jones,
Agreed.
Councillor O'Connell,
Agreed.
Councillor Parish,
Agreed.
Councillor Rapier,
Agreed.
and Councillor Thomas.
Agreed.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, Geraint. Right, we'll move on to agenda item 4, the planning appeal decision. And it's for the demolition of existing buildings and construction of the new Little Food Store and replacement stagecoach office and servicing depot with associated car parking, service areas and landscaping arrangements at Cwmbran Bus Depot, St David's Road and 1 Somerset Road, Cwmbran, NP 441PD. This report is for information only and is to inform members of the decision made by the Planning Inspectorate on the appeal and the application for costs, together with the implications of the decision. Right, can I ask Helen Smith, Principal Planner, to present the report, please?
Yes, thank you. I just share my screen. Yes, as the chair just mentioned, this is just a report for information, just informing members of the outcome of the appeal at the Liddell's Stagecoach proposal. The appeal was allowed and a full award of costs was granted to the appellant. Members will recall that the planning application was refused by Planning Committee in September 2020 and it was refused on highways issues. The inspector has allowed the appeal and a full award of costs granted to the appellant. In allowing the appeal, the inspector concluded that there was no evidence to contradict the evidence submitted by the appellant in support of the proposal in relation to the highways issues. The inspector granted the award of costs as he was of the opinion that council had failed to provide any technical evidence in support of the refusal, and that the council relied on anecdotal evidence and local knowledge. The inspector concluded the council failed to substantiate the reasons for refusal and therefore its actions were unreasonable. It was on this basis that the costs were awarded. The appeal decision is a material consideration which must be taken into account in the determination of future applications on this site, and members will be aware that there is an amended application next on the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Geraint, can you confirm if there are any members wishing to comment or ask a question?
Councillor O'Connell would like to come in, Chair.
Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think from my point of view, this one was blindingly obvious that it was going to be overturned. I'd just like to understand what the costs were in terms of value that the council needed to accept for this investigation.
Right, I don't think they're settled yet, but I think the planning officer can give us an idea. Or would Richard prefer to come in for this one?
That's okay, I can come in on this one, Chair, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Helen.
Yes, the applicant has submitted their costs, but their costs purely relate to the additional work that they undertook as part of the appeal. So nothing to do with any work that they did as part of the planning application. The costs haven't been agreed yet. They have submitted them to us and we're still considering them and assessing them. They've submitted a cost of £14,125 plus VAT. But as I said, we haven't, we need to assess those costs before they're agreed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. I can see Councillor.
Chair, can I just follow up on that?
Oh,
so
yes,
those costs, that's £14,000 plus VAT for, I'm assuming, the planning consultant. Then we would have had an internal cost as well in terms of the planning department's time, effort and resource. So we're probably looking upwards of £25,000. Yeah, and it's just a shame. Just a shame.
Yeah, we all agree with that, but we have no choice. Now I can see Stuart's hand up and Janet. Which was first, Geraint?
Janet, I think.
Councillor Jones first, Chair.
Janet, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite disappointed that this appeal is, that they've won the appeal, especially that as local people, we know how dangerous this roundabout in this area can be. Whilst I accept that we have to agree with what's coming, I'm still very disappointed that it will be going ahead.
Yes, we're all feeling like that. Stuart, do you want to come in now?
Yes, I hear what Councillor O'Connell says, but I don't know what price democracy. I will say that because as the local ward councillor, one of the ward councillors, I have nothing against the actual development. It's the road scheme that local residents, and there are a considerable number of them. That's local democracy. Local people didn't approve of it in any shape or form. Thank you, Janet, for saying what you said. And they were fearful of it. Now, if you read this and you read the application next, the experts and the people there and our own advisors are saying, and to somewhat advisedly, that it will be safe. Well, I have to add that hopefully it is, because there's not much I can do about it now it's gone to appeal. And I will be reluctantly supporting this application because I have to, because it's gone to a Welsh Government appeal. And what it costs, because that's the price of democracy. It's not, it's a cost of what happens. And on planning committee, we have to accept that. Sometimes we win them, sometimes we lose them.
Yeah.
And I have to say that for the residents of Pontywydd Ward. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Stuart. Yes, I'm going to find it very difficult to approve this application too, because I feel strongly about the traffic issues regarding the application. But we have to acknowledge the inspector's report, which makes it obvious that in the inspector's opinion that the committee behaved unreasonably, but we can't do anything about that. But we have to recognise the situation that we find ourselves in now. And I don't think we have a choice but to approve the application, because we haven't come to it yet. But I feel the same as the rest of you. I can see, Steve, your hand is up. And then in...
Chair, I'm in agreement with the people who've spoken already. What I'm deeply disturbed about, that under the 7 Welsh well-beings and our own criteria with cohesive communities and everything else, placemaking, we seem to abandon that for just the thing for trade. Like Stuart said, it is a democracy. The communities are very, very important to us as members, and if they don't want to accept it, then sometimes we get it, we do things and it's gone through. That's out of our hands. But we got to do what the residents want. That's the role of us as members, and we need to look at that first, not as a cost.
Yeah. Well, I agree, but as I said, we have to recognise what the inspectorate has. Well, he's said we are. What does he call us? Unreasonable. Well, I think that is the other way around, but I mean, we would look at it like that, but that's the situation we're in. Gwyn, do you want to speak next?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I agree with everything everybody has said here today. It amazes me that we as a planning committee have made a decision, not 100%, but we made a decision on local knowledge. Yet you can get somebody stuck in an office somewhere who can come and overrule everything about us. I wonder if this had been one person, one little shed in the back of his garden, but because it's a conglomerate with plenty of money, right, it just amazes me that somebody can turn around and say, right, I'm overruling local knowledge and it goes ahead. Well, all I say is this, right, that as a planning committee, if anything happens down there, we are innocent and it'll be on their edge. And, you know, obviously this is going to be a decision that, well, everybody else has said the same on you this morning. I'm absolutely disgusted that this decision has been overruled. Local knowledge, we all know local knowledge down there. Down south, they don't know much about us up north, but up north, we know a lot about our area because we use it a lot. And I am really, really dismayed, and that's my final, that's it. Dreadful. I don't know why we bother as a planning committee.
Well, that's the way it goes, and time will tell. You know, time will tell, the future will tell, and that's all we can do. Right, there's no vote, that's just for our information. So I think we'd better move on to agenda item 5.
Chair, sorry to interrupt, Chair. I've noticed that I think Councillor Bevan has managed to join the meeting at the start of item 4, so I don't know whether he just needs to declare his interests.
Okay. Who would you like to declare any interest in this meeting today?
Thank you, Geraint. Thank you, Chair. No, I don't have any interest to declare, but I mean, I echo the sentiments expressed by other planning committee members as well. To use such strong language against this planning committee and say that we've acted unreasonably and that we did not provide any evidence to support the reason for refusal, I think is disgusting. And to then further say that you know, we've acted unreasonably, I think it's shocking. I think those sentiments have been echoed by other members of the planning committee as well. We did have reasons for the refusal, and we stated the refusal, and in my opinion, they were based on local knowledge. They were based on councillors' views that were representing members in their relevant wards. There were recognised issues about the impact of buses having to reverse, and those were well debated in the previous meeting. So, I mean, as other members have said, we haven't got anything other than we can do but to note this because it's gone through the appeal. Yes, it's disappointing that as a council we've had to incur costs, but this is why we have a planning committee, is that matters can be debated by members of the committee. They can bring forward their views and residents' views, and to say that we didn't have any technical evidence, I think is completely wrong for this inspector to come out and say that. It's a damning indictment of us as a planning committee, and I find it hard to accept that you know, they've put that into words. But I mean, we're only being asked to note it, and there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. But yes, I agree with what other members have said.
Yes, here we are where we are at the moment, but time will tell. You know, we'll see what happens in the future. Jason, do you want to come back in?
Yes, please, Chair. I just want to follow up on Councillor Bevan's comments that we didn't have any technical evidence. I'm not aware of any, but if any should come to light, I'd certainly be interested in knowing what it is. As far as I understand, all we are basing the committee's refusal on, I wouldn't refuse it, is hearsay, rumour and speculation, whereas they have considerable wealth of safety-based analysis and technical detail to state that what they're planning is acceptable, and we're going off feelings and thoughts. So if there's any evidence out there that we haven't seen, I'd be welcome to see it and have my view changed.
Right, okay, right, we are where we are. We can't do anything at the moment. So we'll go on to agenda item 5. Planning application 21/P/0012/FUL. Demolition of existing buildings and construction of a new Lidl food store and replacement stagecoach office and service depot with associated car parking, service areas and landscaping arrangements. And this obviously is the resubmission following refusal of application 19/P/0118/FUL, and it's cited at St David's Road, Cwmbran, NP 441PD. Right, can I ask Helen Smith, Principal Planner, to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as the Chair mentioned, this application is a resubmission following the previous refusal, which was allowed at appeal that we've just been discussing. Just to clarify, the amendments don't relate to the Lidl element of the proposal. They purely relate to the stagecoach element. So the food store element remains as approved at appeal by the inspector. I will run through the changes. So as I said, no changes to the food store element. The stagecoach bus depot element will be amended by the reduction in the size of the building slightly. As a result of the reduction in the size of the building and the operational area, there are a reduction in the bus bays required. The workshop building will now include photovoltaic cells on the roof, in addition to the green roof that was previously proposed. The refueling and the washing facility has been removed from the scheme, and as a result of the reduction in the size of the operational requirements, there is a consequential reduction in the car parking proposed. Just to remind members, I'll run through the proposal. So we have the application site adjacent to Logan Way, St David's Road and Somerset Road. It consists of the existing stagecoach depot and an area of vacant land to the north. Here we have the comprehensive site layout with the food store element in the south and the stagecoach element in the north. Here's a detailed layout of this is the amended scheme for the stagecoach. All access points will remain as previously approved at appeal. They rejigged the internal layout with the parking and reduced the size of the building. Food store element remains the same with access off St David's Road, and its rear elevation will face Somerset Road with the car parking surrounding it, and the delivery access and staff car parking off at Somerset Road. Here's the proposed access into St David's, into Lidl's off St David's Road, and the details of the delivery access. This is the amended building. It's the same design, same materials. It's just slightly reduced in size in terms of its width and its length. The height remains the same, and the proposal for the green roof also remain the same. Here we have the details of the Lidl's building, which also remains the same as previously approved. And here we have some CGI images of the Lidl's element. And members will recall there's a living wall facing Somerset Road to improve its visual impact. And here are just some photographs just to remind members of the site. This is the existing stagecoach depot building. This is the location of the proposed access into the food store. And here we have you can just see to the right the stagecoach element of the site. Looking south towards the town centre. The proposed access points for the stagecoach element and the deliveries to the food store off Somerset Road. And this is the view of the existing depot viewed from at Logan Way. Having regard to the appeal decision as a material consideration, and as the proposed alterations to the stagecoach element of the proposal are acceptable, it is recommended that this application is approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Geraint, I can only see one hand up, and that's Steve.
That's the only one I can see, Chair.
Right. Steve, would you like to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I got a couple of questions, if possible, Chair.
Right.
What I'd like to ask, what's been mitigated for the increase in pollution, if this is approved? The air quality and the pollution, are we going to be monitoring it for the increase? And how are we going to deal with the vast amounts of asbestos that's on the roofs of the garage? Are we going to safely make sure that there's no airborne particles put into towards the communities? What are we doing with the safety provision, particularly for the residents? And then the last one, bats. According to there's no bats in there. Now, I've been told by various people who work there are bats. They fly in the workshop at night. They're on the car parks, coming into the entrance. I'm quite concerned because they're saying there's no bats when I've been informed by others that are. So can somebody answer that, please?
Right, Helen, could you answer that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. In terms of the increase in pollution, Environmental Health were consulted as part of the application and raised no objections to the proposal. Environmental Health do air quality monitoring as part of their functions. So this will be ongoing, but that's an environmental health matter. In terms of the asbestos, there's a condition requiring a demolition method statement to be submitted. And this is replicating the conditions that the inspector imposed as part of the previous scheme. They will have to give us details of how they will have to safely dispose and safely demolish the building. So this will be done in conjunction with consultation with Environmental Health to ensure that it's done in a satisfactory manner. The demolition method statement plus the construction environmental method plan will set out how they seek to protect residents in terms of noise and dust and any adverse impacts on them. The development will have to be carried out in accordance with those details. In terms of bats, a bat survey has been undertaken as part of the original proposal. They also refreshed that survey before submitting this amended scheme. No bats were found to be in the building according to the qualified ecologist that undertook that report. But obviously I'm sure there are bats that are in the surrounding area, especially with the tree line adjacent to St David's Road. And our ecologist is satisfied with that bat survey. Thank you, Chair.
Thank
Can
you.
I come back in, Chair?
Yes.
How can I put it? Staff that worked in the workshops, the bats flew above their head where the canteen was. So somebody's not telling the truth, either the workers or there are bats there. I don't know where the thing is, but I've been in staff, there are bats. So.
Well, we can't say, Helen can't say anything else towards that. I mean, the ecologist has sent his report in. Okay, Steve. Right, Veronica, I think you were next.
Councillor Ashley next, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Stuart?
I was actually. Right, as a couple of fairly quick questions, one for Paul. I'm revisiting yellow boxes here. I wanted to, I don't recollect that on the last application. Now we're not looking at objecting to it. We need to look at what's been proposed. Yellow box to go into Lidl, I think, is the one I wanted about, and how that relates to the one in Trussell Road. Need to know how that relates to each other. Obviously, there's a right, if you're coming up towards the town, there's going to be a yellow box system on there going into the Lidl store and out of the Lidl store, and how that relates to Trussell Road and the lighting system there, and the roundabout. Need to know how that's going to function from a safety point of view. The other one I wanted to ask of Helen was, you talk about there's quite a lot of extensive stuff, which I must admit I didn't see too much in the last application because of concentrating on the whole business of traffic, was the whole business about competitiveness in supermarkets around the area. One of the things you bring up there is the Aldi store, where on the other side of town has been extended 3 times, in my memory. Is this store? This store is, though it's big, is not any bigger than the Aldi at the moment. Is there potential for this to extend? Are we going to have this back in front of this planning committee saying this store is not big enough? If it's, I mean, the plan of this is put it into a bigger site. Are we going to get this back in front of us and extending it? Is there room to extend this store, or are we going to be facing this problem again? I asked that question because Aldi is on a site which is not much bigger than this. and they're going to want to extend. The reason I asked this question is about the car parking, because once you start extending, you've got problems with car parking. That's and then the number 3 question is those trees on St David's Road. I wonder where they got TPOs on them. They're rather nice mature trees. And maybe we've had that question before, but I was looking at them again. They're actually sat in front of that bus depot. And at the moment, we're rather keen on planting more trees in Cwmbran. And I'd like to see the opportunity of putting more trees along there. The more the better, because the whole discussion going on about potential light pollution and noise and bats, as Steve's just raised, that's a big opportunity there.
Right, okay. Okay, Stuart. Shall I call in Paul Highways first to answer the highways question? Paul, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Ashley. Yeah, there was a box junction proposed with the last application, and that is a small box junction as you exit the new site. And there's a box junction proposed as part of this application as well. So none of that access or the location of it or any detail pertaining to it has changed as a consequence of this application. It's exactly the same as previously. With the Trussell Road junction, we considered that previously and it wasn't an issue. And this application is exactly the same, so we wouldn't raise that as an issue in this instance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Is that okay, Stuart?
Well, that was my concern, because the one lot of accidents that we seem to keep having down in Northville / St David's Road are on Trussell Road. Hence, I'm not going to reconduct any of this. We are where we are with it. All I'm going to say that was my concern about how these yellow boxes are managed, because that was the concern of us lot, and then just. Just how we now got where we are, we're going to have to go ahead with this. It's just the management of all of this. I'm looking at it constructively, because I've got residents saying now, right, we're going ahead with the little store. How is that going to be managed? And I just see this combination of that lot. You know, we do get accidents down there, people just bouncing out and I've actually been sat in front of that, so that's I know there are accidents down there. So no, okay. You and the people powers that be have convinced us that this is going to be safe. We're going to have to go along with that. I'll go to the next question, if I may, please.
Right. Helen, could you answer? Unless, Paul, you want to come in and say anything else?
Yeah, Chair, I'll just make a comment. Basically, was obviously. My view is that the council put forward a robust case previously, and the box junction was included within the evidence. Unfortunately, the inspector made a decision, and we are where we are. My view is we put forward or the council put forward a robust case, but there we are. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, then Helen, would you like to answer Stuart's other question?
Yeah, thank you. In terms of the Aldi store, I haven't got the exact sizes in front of me, but it's of a comparable. The new Lidl store is of a comparable size to the Aldi store. In terms of future extensions to Lidl's, obviously they wouldn't require a further planning application, and the site is quite constrained, as you say, and obviously parking is dependent on the size of the building. So if they propose in the future to extend the size of the building, they would also have to increase the number of parking spaces, which would be very difficult on this site given the limited constraints. So I would be very surprised if they could come in with an application in the future for any kind of significant extensions, given the lack of space on the site. But obviously, if they did, we'd have to consider that at that time. In terms of the trees on St David's Road, they're not protected by TPOs at the moment, but they are on council land. So the council are in control of those trees. There's obviously no proposals to add to the planting of those trees as part of this scheme. But whether or not there's another council scheme that can add in some tree planting, I'm not sure. But they're not protected. But the reason they're not protected is that they're on council land and we have control over them ourselves. Thank you, Chair.
Could you, can I make two comments there, please, if I may, Chair? One is, reading through this report here, I get the impression that we got station car park. We've got this, when the scheme goes ahead, we've got this car park and we've got Morrison's. And the attitude that was taken to Morrison's car park, I'm sure the local ward councillor is one of the ones that irritate me as well. The Morrison's car park is regarded as an overflow. Well, when you look at the proximity of the Morrison's car park, the station car park and this together, I presume they're all being treated as a whole. You know, and that used to happen, the Lidl car park and Asda car park on the other side. So any overflow either way is going to be treated like that, because I know the Morrison's car park is treated as an overflow to town centre. So it's going to be rather important that traffic lights work properly, the pedestrian thing, so you can go backwards and forwards, because I suspect there's going to be quite a lot of foot traffic between these various stores when we get this in place. The other thing that concerns me, and I think we raised it the last time, about this, that this store like Morrison's might end up being a short stay car park for the railway station, because that gets banged. As a local ward councillor, I know that. This could be quite an interesting scenario. I'm not proposing anything at all. That's going to be some of the problems. And that it does mention Northville in here. Northville gets used as an overflow car park for the town centre, I can assure you, because the local community councillor is always on about that one. So just make that observation. As far as the tree planting concerned, in our control, I would suggest that might be useful. If we get any useful money out of this, actually put a tree planting down there. And we, as you say, we can't. Can we do TPOs on them? We don't need to, because we own them. But the thing about those particular trees, they form an avenue all the way from neighbouring wards through, because they are part, and it says it in this report, part of the landscape character of the entrance to this town, part of the new town, and it was how it was planted. So it would be useful if we had some sort of planting plan on our own land to go as part of this development. And if we gain any money like 106 or anything from this development, to get some planting done there, please.
Right, it's noted.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, yeah. Veronica, would you like to come in now?
Thank you. And I do support what Councillor Ashley is saying about the trees, because it's noticeable all along that stretch that there have been a lot that have been cut down recently. And of course, being so close to the railway, that's a problem in itself, as we all know, because of Cwmbran Boating Lake and what's been going on there. There's two things I wanted to raise. I noticed that they've taken out on the bus site the refueling and washing. What intrigued me was with regard to the refueling, there's no mention in there of any electric charge points for the buses. Are they due to be put in there? There's plenty of mention of the electric charge points in the car parking. So I just wondered on that, especially as so many of the buses are becoming green, notably Newport at the moment. The other thing that does concern me quite considerably, to some extent, Councillor Ashley alluded to it when he was talking about the crossing point and the traffic lights, but I am particularly concerned during the demolition period, because, as you know, this is part of a safe walking route to school. The schools start before 9 o'clock, so it's obviously busy between 8 and 9. And then the pupils come out around the 3 o'clock mark. And it's incredibly busy at that time, both with the vehicles and with pedestrians. I would like there to be special measures taken to ensure that people are safe, and that if there is some rerouting to be considered, that needs to be considered at an early stage before this work starts, really.
Right, thank you, Veronica. I don't know whether you want to come in first, Helen, or Paul come in.
If I come in first, just in
Yes,
terms of
yes.
the electric charging for the buses, they haven't proposed any electric charging for buses, but I'm not aware of what their fleet consists of. They have proposed some electric charging for the staff and visitors for their cars. If they do have a requirement for electric charging points for the actual buses, then these may not require planning permission in their own right, depending on the actual physical proposals. But that is something that they might be coming forward with. But obviously I don't know what their fleet consists of. But we have secured electric charging points for cars as part of this proposal. In terms of the protecting, the area during the development, as I said, there's a condition requiring a KEMP to ensure that it is developed in a satisfactory manner. But maybe Paul can come in on that issue.
Yeah.
Thank you, Helen. Paul?
Yeah, normally a condition, Chair, of planning consent is that, that they provide a construction environmental management plan. And we can look at that plan, and in some instances we do determine that movements from the site be restricted in some way, but we'll have to have a look at that when their KEMP comes in, so we look at that at the time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, now Veronica, the questions answered.
Yes, I'll watch that very carefully, as I'm sure other members who have well, it's where the school is part of their catchment area, they will be very concerned as well.
Yes, right, thank you. Janet, would you like to come in now?
Yes, please. I think Paul's practically answered my question. I was just going to inquire, how are we going to minimise the disruption caused to residents in the area during this particular time? But I think Paul's obviously answered my question now. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Janet. Right, who you wanted to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Crick has asked questions that I was going to raise with regards to ecology, and Councillor Ashley as well. I think there was a couple of things. If we could get perhaps a bit more of a feel for the background into the various changes, the reasons for why there's been a revised application put in. It's already been mentioned that there's not going to be refueling, and there's not going to be a washing thing for the buses, and there are various other changes as well that are coming in. Just wondered if the planning officer could give us a sense of why there's been an amended application coming in. And just coming back to the report, I don't want to make a big thing about this because it's already been covered, and we've already looked at the inspector's report, but I know that there are still some concerns surrounding highways and transportation, in that the officer said, whilst he's noted that he doesn't feel he's able to advise a refusal of the revised application on highway safety grounds, he still highlights some concerns that he had. And what he's actually put in the report is that there would have to be further safety audits conducted when the junction is in operation, and that's on page 46. So who would the responsibility of that fall upon? Would it be our own highways and transportation officers within the council? And once the development is completed, should something come up as a result of these further safety audits, what are the implications of that? Would there be any additional costs, and would they fall upon the council or the developer? Just to get a bit of clarification around that, please, Chair.
Okay, Helen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just in terms of your question in relation to the amendments to the stagecoach element, my understanding is that Stagecoach haven't, following the the original application, Stagecoach have undertaken a review of their operational requirements, and then these changes are born out of that review. I mean, I haven't been party to the reasons why, but they reviewed their proposal and felt that there were necessary changes needed from an operational point of view. And then obviously they don't have to justify the changes as part of this planning application, but I'm aware that that's the reason why. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Right. Oh, do you want to come in, Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
In relation to Councillor Bevan's question on the safety audit, yeah, there'll be a safety audit. What we would normally expect as part of a highways agreement, now that we would need to enter into with the applicant, should it get planning consent. We would enter into what's called a Section 278 agreement, which would authorise the junction and its construction. So as part of that, we do a safety audit once the detailed design has been done. When I say we, in relation to Councillor Bevan's question, is that all the audits are carried out by the applicant's consultants. So that we would request that they provide a safety audit on the detailed design. When the junction is constructed, we would then ask for another safety audit a year after opening. And any recommendations of the audit, we ask that the applicant pays for any works that's required as part of any recommendation that comes out of the audit. Say, for instance, on something as simple as this, right turn junction, there might be some amendments to some lining or some additional signing that's normally required, or some advanced warning signs. So it generally tends to be minor works at the end, rather than a major significant redesign of the junction. In effect, there's nothing else you could really do once this has got planning consent, and once we give authorization for that junction. That is the junction that will be there, that you can see on the plans that have been deposited as part of the application. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Stuart, did you want to come in again?
I couldn't see on the application either of these developments they're offering us any community money at all.
Helen can come in with that.
No, they're not. There are limited things that you can request as part of Section 106 contributions, because they have to relate to the development, and there weren't any there were no triggers as part of this proposal.
Because it's so looking at the trees, the landscape architect suggested in front of the development, it would have been a rather nice gesture.
There is a landscaping scheme as part of the proposal.
No, that's acceptable, Helen. But it's just that where she suggests putting them on our land in front of the development, that actually would have been a nice bit more tree planting down there would have been very useful, or shrubs. I can only make that observation because I've just reread over what the landscape architect said again, and they're quite nice. Those trees are wonderful. But I just went back over what I said again, and some more a bit of mitigation would have been very useful as part of this development.
Right. So Helen has explained it to you.
No,
I don't know whether she wants to add anything to it, but I think she did give you the explanation.
No,
why.
thank you. Sorry about that. My hearing's not brilliant on here sometimes.
Okay. Right. If there aren't any more questions, can I ask a member to move a proposal? Who's going to be brave enough?
I'll move it, Chair.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Because somebody seconded, please.
Yeah, I'll second it.
I'll second it. Yeah.
Thank you. Right. We go to you now, Geraint. Can I ask you, please, to ask the members in alphabetical order to state whether they are for, against, or abstaining?
Okay, thank you, Chair. If I can start with Councillor Ashley, please.
I'll have debate with myself whether I should abstain or be for this, but as the inspector said, we have no choice. I am for it.
Councillor Bevan?
For.
Councillor Crick?
For.
Councillor Evans?
For.
Councillor Haller?
Abstain.
Councillor James?
For.
Councillor Jenkins?
Against.
Councillor Fay Jones?
For, and I do hope that the trees will be taken into consideration. There'll be more there.
Thank you, Faye.
Councillor Janet Jones?
Against.
Councillor O'Connell?
Big four. Well done, applicant.
Councillor Parish?
For.
Councillor Rapier?
For.
And Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, I'm for.
Okay, thank you. So that's 10 who are for, 2 against and 1 abstention, Chair.
Thank you, Geraint. This planning application has been approved. Right, can you call back Lenny Constance, please, Councillor?
Yeah, no problem, Chair.
Is he there? Are you there, Lenny?
I'll call him. I'll call him back in and let you know when he's in, Chair.
Oh, I thought he made a noise. It must have been somebody else.
Apologies, Chair, it was me, and I thought my microphone was off. My wife got the parcel.
You were guilty again. Right, if you can call him back in before we start agenda item 6.
Right, he's back in the meeting now, Chair.
Thank you, Geraint. Right. Agenda item 6, which is planning application 21/P/0049/FUL, construction of new manufacturing facility, offices, parking and associated works at Land Off Grange Road, Cwmbran, NP 443XX. Can I ask Claire Hall, Senior Planner, to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
There's only one update to the report in terms of the assessment. Doesn't actually affect the recommendation, but NRW have now agreed the modelling that's been undertaken by the developer, and a revised flood consequences assessment document is currently with them, and we're just awaiting their views on that final document. The recommendation reflects that position, but it has moved on slightly since when the report was first drafted. Okay, this is the application site. It's between the railway line and the main St David's road into Cwmbran. This is Southville. This is Grange Road Industrial Estate. The application is for a new manufacturing building, which is this large rectangular shape here. The proposal includes a main access shared with Crane at the northern end of the site, with a secondary access more for emergency use, I would suggest, rather than routinely used on the southern boundary. Landscaping details along the main public facades, which are the western elevation, the eastern elevation to the recreation fields on the other side of the railway line, and the area to the south, which is doubling as the main sustainable drainage solution for the site. There are some Torvine owned land here, which are very heavily treed, which you'll see in a minute. So it's a box, a very large box. It's obviously functional in its design, but they have looked at the principal public elevations and tried to make that design more interesting, coupled with the landscaping that I've just identified. There's a couple of options in terms of sort of the basins for the sustainable drainage. That is obviously subject to a separate application to the sustainable drainage approval body, which needs to be carried out within, I think it's 7 weeks of submission, and the final scheme will depend on that process. But broadly speaking, from a planning point of view, it's largely the same in terms of there's landscaping and swales to control the surface water, and there'll be attenuation areas here which is proposed to be landscaped up, and to from a public vista point of view to soften the appearance of the car parking in the building, but also to provide some amenity space for employees, for example, if they want to sit out and eat their lunch lunchtime. So that's a view of the site from the bridge over on Llanfrecfr Way. So this is the existing crane facility in the foreground, and this is the site which is currently vacant, and you can see Southfield Tower in the background as well. This is the main entrance into the site, which is here. So this is the existing site entrance into Crane. It's proposed to utilise this main point in. Again, this is a very aerial view down the site. Sorry, it was very wet today. I took the photographs. And this is the secondary access point along the southern boundary of Llanfrecfr Way.
Claire, before you go on, can I ask the members if they've all turned their mics off, because there's a lot of interference at the moment. Okay, Claire, sorry about that.
Sorry, just to recap those photographs then. So that's a view into the from the north. This is the existing crane facility. So this is the access into the site at the northern end. This is a view of the site as a whole. Obviously, it's vacant at the moment, with the previous buildings having been demolished some time ago. And this is the southern boundary. So that the first photograph was taken from the top of the bridge here. So this is the line of trees that screen the railway line from the recreation area, and these are the Torvine owned trees at the southern boundary, which are outside the site. The aerial view gives you a better idea. So this is the main gateway, obviously, into Cwmbran. Cwmbran town centre's up here. This is the existing crane development. The landscaping is proposed along this boundary and this boundary to maintain the sort of public frontages of the site. Access into the site here with the factory building in the centre, and this sort of southern half all given over to landscaping as part of the SUDS development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. Right, I can see we've got some questions. Jason, I think you're first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Initially, what a brilliant development. It'll transform, I think, as a derelict part of the town. So, you know, congratulations to Crane. I think it'll turn the current operation into a world-class, green, efficient facility, and that can only be a good thing. The 2 points I'd like to make is, firstly, on the construction. Just to make sure that consideration is given to the 2 residential properties that sit just opposite the road there on the roundabout. And the other point I have is just to know what the plan is for the existing crane facility, whether they intend to demolish or keep. Thank you.
Claire, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Connell. In terms of the construction, excuse me, obviously the proximity to the existing residential properties were noted. They did a noise impact assessment as part of the application, and there are recommendations in there that need to be carried out. There's also a requirement for a construction environmental management plan. Crane actually intend to commission a further noise report, because the application at the moment has been submitted by the landowner, not by Crane. Obviously, they're trying to take into account all Crane's requirements, but I think the expectation is that if the contracts are concluded, Crane would then do some further noise impact assessment works, which will inform their own plans, and the condition is worded in such a way as that would allow for that to happen. So the proximity to the residential is is acknowledged really, and has been addressed, and it's expected that further work will be carried out in that area, which would obviously then be controlled in terms of implementation of the permission. In terms of the existing site, that was the one question I was hoping nobody would ask me, because I don't know is the answer. You know, the application site is being put through the candidate site process for the replacement local development plan. So I dare say more information will come on stream as that replacement plan progresses. But I can only sort of speculate at this stage that the crane will slowly start to transplant from one site to the other, and then there'll be a potential then opportunity for either an existing business to come into the existing building, or for that site to be redeveloped as is required. But like I said, I think that's probably best dealt with through the candidate site process. I think from the point of view of this application, we just have to assume that you know, there'll be two buildings side by side, at least in the short term, but whether that will change in the longer term, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say when you look at that area, if this does go ahead and finally gets built, we'll have quite a nice area of redevelopment from that site to the Sixth Form College, to Morrison's, and then the new Lidl. So it would be good if there were plans put in place to develop that pre-existing crane site.
Right, thank you. Dave, I've got you next on the list.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As ward member, I welcome this development. I think it's going to be a fantastic move for the area. What I would ask officers is, are there any highway improvement opportunities, especially for Llewellyn Road, as you come off Cwmbran Drive, some vehicles would come down through Llewellyn Road to the site, and as you know, it is quite a narrow road, and I was just wondering whether we could perhaps improve on some of the grass verges there by turning those into parking areas. If we could look into that, that would be a fantastic opportunity for the residents of Llewellyn Road. Is there any opportunities there for us to perhaps do that?
Claire?
Not as part of this application is the short answer. I don't know. From the planning point of view, the context is this is a site that was always occupied for industrial development, and in terms of access and egress into the site and all the parking and highway requirements that are needed to support the application, they're all being met on site. I'm not aware that there are any off-site issues that require attention in order to facilitate this particular development. That said, I don't know if Paul wants to make a more general point on any other plans that may be in that area on a wider sort of Torfaen basis, but certainly not in relation to this application specifically.
I can only reiterate what Claire has said, really, is that not specifically as part of this application. I am aware, though, of what happens on Llewellyn Road, and that the grass verges get churned up, etc., but I don't think that would be made any worse as a consequence of this application. I think that should be looked at by another rather than this application in itself. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, Dave? Yeah, right. Stuart is next on my list.
Yeah, I think it's a great scheme. I've got no objections whatsoever. Agree, and I know my colleagues on the community council, when I spoke to them about this one, have also said that as well. So there's a lot of support from that direction. Anything brings jobs in. What I was interested in was, and it could sound a bit technical, it's not meant to be. I picked up what the ecologist and the ecological report on the site is. It's a very big site. It's been empty for quite a long time, and by a lot of people's standards, it's rough. It's got quite a lot of strange ecology on it. Bear in mind that old industrial sites like this do. This is very different to having a landscape that's pretty. And the ecologist, if you read, has said about the ecology, and there's a little bit of a discussion between him and the applicants, ecologist. You get this. If you were to go to Blaenavon, which is a World Heritage Site, you'll get something up there that looks like a tip, and is a tip, but it's got very interesting ecology. And what we're looking at, I think, in this report is that kind of thing. If you leave a site empty for a while, it's got ecology. And I think the ecology on this site could be interesting from an ecologist's point of view. It needs looking at. And I'm getting from the ecologist that he would like that examined a bit more. That's one side of it. The other side of it, which I think has been picked up by other councillors, we do need we've got a landscaping thing to go in there. The whole bit about natives and in keeping with the town, which I'm sure other councillors agree with, but we picked up on the other application, and I think Jason's sort of put that quite well as well, that bit coming from the developments all the way, it needs to be in keeping with what we've got locally. And you've also got the railway line with the other thing and the river. So the whole lot is all in keeping, and it also fits in. So the ecology, that whole debate with the ecologists here, have you got any comment on that? Because I think that's quite a large section in there. And I get a flavour of that. That shouldn't stop the development at all. It's an ecological thing, but that does need looking at, I think.
Shall I answer, Chair?
Yes, please. Sorry. Yes, please, Claire.
Yeah, that's fine. I think it's fair to say our ecologist wasn't happy really with the reports that were undertaken. I think this is one of those areas where planning sort of comes into conflict with the various things that we are being asked to deliver, really. We're being told very strongly to redevelop brownfield sites in good locations, but brownfield sites are often, especially ones like this that have been left untouched for a long time, are rich for biodiversity. Yeah. So I think that there are two elements to this, if I may. The first one, I think, is the baseline survey information that they carried out. Our ecologist basically doesn't agree with their findings. Okay, I think he was quite scathing in terms of what they did and how they did it. I think he thinks they undervalued the site from an ecology point of view. That said, being pragmatic here about the realities of delivering major projects on brownfield sites, there is an element of site survey work and investigation that has to happen, that may fall foul of technically of some of those ecological considerations. And I think the conclusion we came to really was, because the scheme is very much developed with a sustainable drainage and a big emphasis on a good sort of third of the site being given over to new soft planting and landscaping and habitat. It's a question of horse trading, if you like, in terms of the biodiversity benefit. So from a planning point of view, we have to be satisfied that there's no net biodiversity loss. I think the conclusion is that we think the site was more valuable than maybe their report suggested that they were. But on balance, the ecological impact will be okay because there will be no net loss, but the habitat that is being put back will be different to the habitat that's being lost. No two ways about it, because what was there before was the remnants of old industrial development that has been colonized by insects or what have you, and what's being put back, as you say, is I wouldn't just say it's pretty landscaping, it is functional. Our ecologist has been involved in the detail in that regard, so has our landscape officer, and we're not quite there, which you'll see from the report. A detailed scheme has been worked up, but there's still bits of it we're not happy with, and condition 5 that's recommended identifies those elements that we want a bit more work done on it. But I think there is a recognition from the developer and from us that so long as there's no biodiversity loss, in fact there's a biodiversity gain, that on balance we think it's okay, because Planning Policy Wales, whilst it encourages and focuses on developing brownfield sites, it actually does make an exception for ones that have been identified, which is what the ecologist has picked up on, as being an open mosaic, I think is how it's described. It's sort of very special in terms of environmental law, and obviously there is a potential conflict there in terms of the realities of bringing sites forward for development and how that is managed, because ironically, I think, whereas we all understand the importance of protecting green fields, actually from a biodiversity habitat point of view, brownfield sites are often better, you know, in terms of the habitat that it presents. So I think, to conclude, I think our ecologists would have preferred the baseline survey evidence to have been better, so that he could have supported their own conclusions. But notwithstanding that, even though he thinks they've undervalued the habitat value of the site as it was, going forward, the scheme as proposed has sufficiently considered that, so that we can be satisfied from a planning point of view that it meets the tests in terms of there being a nature-based approach to the development of this site, and that's why it's very heavily on the sustainable drainage and the landscaping on those. It's on 3 sides actually, but the one side is just a hedge between the building and the railway line. It's those 2 public vistas, if you like, along the western and southern boundaries. I hope that helps.
Chair, can I reply to that, please, if I may? You don't.
Well, brief.
Very briefly. That's a very good answer. I can't answer that, and I'm not going to. I understand exactly what you're going to say. I think you've got a work in progress, basically.
Right.
Is there a reply to that?
Yeah, like I said, we're almost there. There's a landscaping condition recommended.
Which,
yeah.
No, that's a very good answer. You've done it well there, and I'm content from that point of view, to be quite honest.
Right. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Claire. Right, I've got Gaynor next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's not a question. It's just I just want to say that I welcome this application into Torfaen. Any new manufacturing is always good news, and obviously providing the jobs. And I just hope members approve this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Gaynor. Yes, I'm sure we all feel the same way. It's good to have good news for a change, isn't it? Right, Steve next.
Yeah, just to say that where you come in the entrance and where the fairground is, when the previous owner, Saunders Val, had it, there were buildings there already. So even the houses opposite were aware there was buildings before they probably moved in, because I work right alongside there where the houses are. So I know the area very well, and I played sport for the Saunders Val. So I mean, there have been buildings there previously. So yeah. I welcome it. Yeah.
Right, thank you for that, Steve. I don't know whether Claire wants to comment, because you were just...
Not on that specific point. I think I would just make sure members are aware of the recommendation. We as officers are still not quite prepared to sign it off as an issue of planning permission tomorrow. We've just got that little bit of work to NRW. So we're effectively asking for you to indicate your support and give us delegated approval just to sort that last issue out, really.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. Janet?
I just wondered, what were the risks of any contamination on this particular piece of land?
Significant. There's been a lot of work done in that area. The developers have spent an awful lot of money doing various contamination reports, and they've identified a remediation strategy, and NRW have already, and our public health have already signed off on that. The conditions that are recommended relate to the ongoing and future monitoring of that and the arrangements for it, but we're satisfied that the contamination risk has been properly assessed and is acceptable.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you both. Right, I can't see any other hands up. So would a member like to move a proposal?
No, sorry, Chair, I wanted to come in. I had a quick question as well.
Oh.
Hugh? Oh, I didn't see your hand.
Apologies. Yeah, I thought my hand was up, but it wasn't. Yeah. Yeah, I just want to say I support this as well. I think it's brilliant that we've got jobs coming in and redevelopment of a brownfield site, and I echo the sentiments that have been expressed by some of the other councillors. Just on a very minor thing, we've talked a lot about the biodiversity and ecology, but just a quick question with regards to surface water and drainage. That's the only slight little thing that I wanted to ask a question about. It's not far away from where the old mill was and the water course, and that used to run down into the Avon Lwyd. And the report itself references that there's an aquifer there. So there is like a spring, and it's got plans for a basin for water and a surface water culvert, which would then effectively run off into the Avon Lwyd. Given that the site had been previously development for industrial usage, and we know that there's going to have to be quite a bit of cleanup work undertaken there. Just wanted to ask for a little bit more information about the surface water runoff and the plans for that. I've got to say, it's only a very minor thing as far as I'm concerned, because I do support this application.
Aye. Claire?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think the surface water runoff is a significant issue on here, but the developers are well aware of that. I mean, it's very rare for us to, at planning stage, to have such a detailed sustainable drainage scheme already worked up. But that goes hand in hand with the various other issues that affect this site in terms of it being in an area of flood risk, and also that from an ecological point of view. So the sustainable drainage, if you like, ticks all those boxes in one. It controls water, which minimises the flood risk, which also contributes to biodiversity and habitat gain. So if I've put the drainage layout back up again. So there's a series of swales that would control water runoff from the building and the hard surfaces. And there would be porous, material using above ground surfaces, etc. And there's a series of attenuation in this general area. Now, the scheme for that needs to be worked up in more detail with a separate sustainable drainage body. That's why there's sort of different options for how that might look from a landscaping point of view, because it might be one large area or it might be a series of smaller areas, depending on what the sustainable drainage body agree. So suffice to say that the constraints of the site, aquifers and the like, and the surface water is a significant consideration, because the contamination also potentially would affect controlled waters if that's not managed properly. So I think it's fair to say, from a developer's point of view, they've spent an awful lot of money doing those reports and working that up, so that we can be confident that the surface water is managed in a way that is not going to lead to pollution of the adjacent water courses, or add in any way to the flood risk.
Right, thank you, Claire. You okay with that, Hugh?
Yes, thank you, Claire, and thank you, Chair, for that answer.
Chair,
I'm glad that that's been looked at in detail. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Chair, you just reminded me of something about that. Another question I have as well.
Well, is it a very quick question?
Yeah, it's on drainage.
Okay.
Underneath the town centre, there are two streams. There's the Cwmbran stream, and I can't remember the name of the other stream that comes out from where the so-called B&Q roundabout is. There's two. They come out. The one that powers up the water wheel, the old mill that Hugh was on about. That's this system that you're talking about, isn't it? Because the one stream comes out on the other side of the roundabout from there.
Claire?
Claire, are you getting me?
Yes, you can. I don't know the answer to that. Your local knowledge is going to be
I do canals. That's why I know this one.
Yeah, all I can say with my my sort of planning hat on is that the relative expertise, our drainage officer and the consultants at NRW have been all involved in that, and they're telling me it's fine. So I'm not going to query otherwise, really.
Well, no, I'll leave it there and we'll go on to proposal. But it sounds like a sound scheme. But the whole town centre has got those two streams. One that comes out of Pontnewydd Ward and goes down there, and the other that comes out of by Springvale, and that comes down over there. And it's interesting. They all go into Avon Lwyd. The town centre. I mean, they've had to put a hell of a lot of drainage in there to stop it doing them. So that is the problem they got. It all goes under the railway line and ends up in Avon Lwyd. Yeah,
right. Thank you
for that. No, it's fascinating. That's drainage. I'll go on about that. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you, Claire. David, do you want to come in again?
Yeah, I just wanted to move the proposal, please, Chair.
Yeah. Yes, it has been moved and seconded.
Yeah.
Anybody want to second it again, just for the record?
I'll second it.
It's seconded. Now this is.
Seconded again, yeah.
Yeah, this is subject to the recommendations in the report. We all know that. So, Geraint, can I use you again, please? Can you call everyone out in alphabetical order?
No problem, Chair.
Against or abstaining?
Thanks, Chair. If I can start with Councillor Ashley, please.
For.
Councillor Bevan.
For.
Councillor Constance.
For.
Councillor Crick.
Can I just say I'm so pleased that Crane have decided to stay in Cwmbran. They could so easily have gone elsewhere in Europe. It's wonderful support they've given their local workforce in Wales. So I'm very pleased to support this.
Right, Ms. Paul.
Councillor Evans.
Yeah, I agree with Veronica. I'm for, yeah.
Councillor Hawler.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Jenkins.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Faye Jones.
For.
Councillor Janet Jones.
For.
Councillor O'Connell.
For.
Councillor Parish.
For.
Councillor Rapier. And Councillor Thomas.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Right, this planning application has been approved. Right, I'd like to thank everyone for your attendance and your contributions. I'll now close the meeting.
Thanks, Chair. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice day. I'll speak to you all soon.